Nia Bennett had waited for this day, a day of shimmering satin and clouds of tulle, a day of anticipation and joy. She hadn't expected the welcome she would receive at Vivienne Monroe's boutique. Sunlight, refracted through the pristine glass storefront, danced on the polished marble floor inside. Nia, elegant in a cream linen suit and understated diamond studs, felt a flutter of excitement. This was it, the search for the dress. The air, however, thickened the moment she stepped inside. It wasn't the scent of expensive perfume, though that hung heavy in the air. It was something else, something colder. Vivienne Monroe, the boutique manager, perched precariously on a velvet-upholstered stool behind a small, ornate desk, barely glanced up from her meticulously manicured nails. Nia's presence seemed to register as a minor inconvenience, a fly buzzing near a perfectly arranged bouquet. Linda Harper, Vivienne's assistant, hovered nearby, a shadow clinging to the wall, her gaze flitting nervously between Nia and her boss. "I have an appointment," Nia announced, her voice soft yet confident. She offered her name, a smile playing on her lips. The smile faltered. Vivienne's eyes, sharp and assessing, finally met hers. The look was not one of welcome. "An appointment?" Vivienne echoed, her tone dripping with skepticism. She finally lowered her gaze to a leather-bound appointment book, her fingers tracing the page with exaggerated slowness. "I don't see Nia Bennett." The way she lingered on the name suggested it was somehow foreign, unwelcome on her tongue. Nia's stomach tightened. She knew the appointment had been confirmed. She'd spoken with Linda herself just yesterday. She opened her mouth to speak, but Vivienne cut her off. "Perhaps you've mistaken us for another establishment, dear," Vivienne said, her voice laced with condescending sweetness. "We cater to a specific clientele." Her eyes flicked down, taking in Nia's outfit, lingering on her handbag. The unspoken message hung in the air, thick and suffocating. "You don't belong here." Linda, her face pale, avoided Nia's eyes. She wrung her hands, a silent participant in this subtle but brutal dismissal. Humiliation pricked at Nia's eyes. She straightened her spine, refusing to let the sting show. "I assure you, there is no mistake. I spoke with Linda yesterday." She turned to Linda, a silent plea for support. Linda's eyes darted towards Vivienne, then back to the wall, a prisoner trapped in her own silence. Vivienne's lips tightened. Linda is new, prone to errors. She snapped the appointment book shut, the sound sharp in the hushed boutique. "I suggest you check your details and try again. Perhaps somewhere else." The dismissal was complete. Final. Nia's breath caught in her throat. She felt the blood drain from her face, the boutique's elegant decor blurring around her. She wanted to argue, to demand the service she deserved. But the look in Vivienne's eyes, the smug satisfaction, the utter lack of remorse, stopped her. This wasn't about a misplaced appointment. This was something else, something ugly and insidious. "I understand," Nia whispered, her voice trembling slightly. She turned and walked towards the exit, the sunlight outside a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness she felt within. "And if you do return," Vivienne called after her voice sharp and cold, "I'll have to ask security to escort you out." Tears stung Nia's eyes as she pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped onto the bustling city sidewalk. The city noise, usually a vibrant hum, now felt like a cacophony assaulting her ears. She stumbled, blinded by the unexpected sting of rejection, and nearly collided with a passerby. Ethan Matthews, Nia's fiancé, found her sitting on a bench in a nearby park, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He knelt beside her, his hand gently resting on her back. Ethan, a billionaire philanthropist known for his quiet power and unwavering commitment to social justice, exuded a calming presence. But the fury in his eyes betrayed his composure. Nia recounted the incident, her voice choked with emotion. Ethan listened intently, his jaw clenched, his hand tightening on hers. When she finished, he held her close, letting her cry into his shoulder. His silence spoke volumes. It was a silence pregnant with the promise of action. "I'll handle this, Nia," he murmured, his voice low and steady. "No one treats you like that. No one." Nia shook her head, pulling back slightly. No, Ethan. I don't want you to. Not like this. She wiped her tears, a new resolve hardening her gaze. I don't want to fight fire with fire. There has to be another way. Ethan studied her face, his expression softening. He understood. Nia's strength lay not in her ability to retaliate, but in her unwavering commitment to grace and dignity, even in the face of injustice. I understand, he said, his voice gentle. But a glint in his eye hinted at a plan forming. A plan that would expose the ugliness he had witnessed in Nia's eyes. A plan that would ensure justice was served, not through anger, but through something far more potent. A few days later, Nia returned to Vivian Monroe's boutique. She told herself it was to retrieve a forgotten scarf, a flimsy excuse, even to herself. In truth, she wanted to face Vivian again, to show her that she would not be broken by her cruelty. Vivian, perched on her usual stool, her expression even more glacial than before, recognized Nia instantly. Suspicion narrowed her eyes. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice devoid of any pretense of politeness. "I believe I left a scarf here," Nia said calmly, her gaze steady. "A scarf?" Vivian scoffed. "I highly doubt that." She gestured dismissively towards the door. "I suggest you leave before I—" Nia reached out, her fingers brushing against the delicate fabric of a nearby wedding gown. It was a stunning creation, a cascade of ivory lace and pearls. She imagined herself walking down the aisle in it, a vision that both warmed and pained her. Vivian's hand shot out, grabbing Nia's wrist. "Don't touch that," she hissed, her voice venomous. "You can't afford anything in this store." The scene repeated itself, but this time, it was different. This time, other customers, browsing through the racks of designer gowns, turned to watch. Their eyes, filled with curiosity and a hint of disapproval, rested on Vivian. The silent judgment hung heavy in the air. Nia met Vivian's gaze, her expression unwavering. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She simply withdrew her hand, a quiet victory in the face of blatant prejudice. Then, she turned and walked out, leaving Vivian standing there, her hands still outstretched, her face flushed with anger and a flicker of something else, fear. That evening, the phone rang. It was Linda Harper, her voice hesitant and apologetic. She explained that Jessica Walters, the boutique owner, had selected a high-profile wedding to showcase their designs. The bride, Linda stammered, was Nia Bennett. The irony wasn't lost on Nia. The very boutique that had dismissed her, that had treated her with such disdain, now needed her. The universe, it seemed, had a peculiar sense of humor. Ethan, his hand resting protectively on Nia's lower back, listened to the conversation, his expression unreadable. When Nia hung up, he raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement flickering in his eyes. "Well, this should be interesting," he said, his voice laced with dry humor. Nia sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know, Ethan. I don't want to give them my business." "Not after." "I understand," Ethan said, his voice softening. "But think of it this way. This is your chance to show them who you are, to show them that their prejudice doesn't define you." He paused, his eyes twinkling. "Besides," he added, a mischievous grin spreading across his face, "I have a feeling this might be more entertaining than we think." The days leading up to the first fitting were a whirlwind of activity. Jessica Walters, the boutique owner, was in a frenzy. This wedding, she'd explained to her staff in hushed, reverent tones, was their ticket to the big leagues. The bride, a prominent socialite, was marrying one of the wealthiest men in the country. The publicity would be invaluable. Vivian, oblivious to the identity of the bride, was a tightly wound spring of anxiety. Jessica had stressed the importance of impeccable service, of absolute discretion. Vivian, desperate to prove herself, micromanaged every detail, her sharp voice echoing through the boutique. Linda, caught in the crossfire, moved with the frantic energy of a trapped bird. The day of the fitting arrived. Nia, dressed in a simple but elegant sheath dress, stepped into the boutique, Ethan by her side. The air in the room crackled with a palpable tension. Vivian, her face plastered with a strained smile, greeted them with an overabundance of enthusiasm. Welcome, welcome, she gushed, her eyes darting nervously between Nia and Ethan. She hadn't connected the dots. Nia was just another client, albeit one who exuded an air of quiet confidence that unsettled her. Thank you, Nia replied, her voice calm and composed. She allowed a small, knowing smile to play on her lips. The fitting room was a sanctuary of plush velvet and soft lighting. Vivian, her movements stiff and awkward, fussed over Nia, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the gown. It was the same gown Nia had admired before, the one Vivian had forbidden her to touch. Now, it draped elegantly over Nia's frame, a testament to her inherent grace. It's beautiful, Nia murmured, her eyes meeting Vivian's in the mirror. Vivian's smile faltered, a flicker of recognition passing through her eyes. But it was fleeting, dismissed as quickly as it appeared. The fitting progressed, punctuated by Vivian's nervous chatter and the occasional, almost imperceptible, slip of her usually impeccable composure. A button slipped from her trembling fingers. A seam ripped slightly as she adjusted the train. Small, almost insignificant errors, but enough to betray the unease simmering beneath her carefully constructed facade. Are you all right, Vivian? Nia asked, her voice gentle. Vivian started, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh yes, of course. Just a little flustered. This gown is quite delicate. Her voice wavered slightly. Nia watched her, a quiet understanding dawning in her eyes. Vivian's anxiety wasn't just about the importance of this particular client. It was something more, something deeper. Later that day, as Nia and Ethan were leaving the boutique, a loud crash echoed from within. They turned to see Vivian, her face contorted with rage, berating a young assistant who had apparently misplaced a crucial accessory. The girl, her eyes wide with fear, cowered under Vivian's verbal assault. Nia exchanged a look with Ethan. The incident confirmed what she had already suspected. Vivian's behavior wasn't just about prejudice. It was about power, about control, and it was about a deep-seated insecurity that she masked with cruelty. As they walked away, Nia couldn't shake the image of the young assistant, her face streaked with tears. It reminded her of her own humiliation, of the sting of Vivian's dismissive words. But it also strengthened her resolve. She would not let Vivian's bitterness taint her joy. She would not let her steal her moment. The next few days were a blur of final preparations. The wedding was fast approaching, and the excitement was palpable. Nia, surrounded by her friends and family, felt a sense of peace she hadn't expected. The incident at the boutique, though still painful, had become a catalyst for something positive. It had solidified her commitment to using her platform, her privilege, to lift others up, to fight against the very prejudice she had experienced. One evening, as Nia was finalizing the seating arrangements, the phone rang. It was Vivian, her voice strained and hesitant. She stammered, apologized for a minor scheduling error, and asked Nia to come in for one final fitting. Nia hesitated. She didn't want to see Vivian again. But something, a strange sense of anticipation, compelled her to agree. The final fitting was a stark contrast to the previous ones. Vivian, her usual composure completely shattered, fumbled with the gown, her hands shaking so badly she could barely fasten the buttons. Her eyes, red-rimmed and filled with a mixture of fear and desperation, darted nervously around the room. She kept apologizing, her voice barely above a whisper. "The gown, it's perfect," Nia said softly, her voice filled with genuine compassion. She saw the fear in Vivian's eyes, the crumbling facade of the woman who had once seemed so invincible. And in that moment, she understood Vivian wasn't just a villain in her story. She was a complex, flawed human being, trapped in her own web of insecurity and prejudice. As Nia was leaving, Vivian finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "You're the bride, aren't you?" Nia paused, turning to face her. She met Vivian's gaze, her expression unwavering. She didn't speak. The silence hung heavy in the air, a silent confirmation that changed everything. The realization of who Nia was, who she was marrying, washed over Vivian like a tidal wave. The blood drained from her face, leaving her pale and trembling. She stumbled back, her hand clutching her chest as if she'd been struck a physical blow. The carefully constructed wall she had built around herself, the walls of arrogance and prejudice, began to crumble, revealing the fragile, insecure woman beneath. The realization that she had mistreated, had actively dismissed, one of the wealthiest, most influential women in the country, was devastating. The consequences, she knew, would be severe, and she had no one to blame but herself. The days leading up to the wedding were a slow torture for Vivian. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford, replaced by a relentless replay of her interactions with Nia. Each dismissive word, every condescending glance, echoed in her mind, amplifying her growing dread. The carefully constructed facade of control she maintained at the boutique began to crack, revealing the panic churning beneath. She snapped at Linda, barked orders at the other staff, her anxiety a palpable force that suffocated the once elegant atmosphere of the shop. Jessica Walters, blissfully unaware of the brewing storm, was ecstatic. The high-profile wedding was generating buzz, the press coverage exceeding even her wildest expectations. She showered Vivian with praise, commending her on the flawless execution of the bride's gown, further deepening Vivian's internal turmoil. Each compliment felt like a twist of the knife, a reminder of the impending disaster. Nia, meanwhile, floated through the pre-wedding chaos with an almost ethereal calm. The incident with Vivian had, strangely, become a source of strength. It had solidified her resolve to use her platform for good, to transform her pain into an opportunity to empower others. She and Ethan finalized plans for their foundation, a project close to both their hearts, designed to support underprivileged women pursuing their dreams. The final fitting arrived, heavy with unspoken tension. Nia, radiant in her pre-wedding glow, entered the boutique, her presence filling the room like sunlight. Vivian, her face pale and drawn, forced a smile, her hands trembling as she adjusted the veil. The air crackled with unspoken words, the past hovering like a specter between them. "Everything is perfect," Nia said, her voice soft yet firm. She looked directly at Vivian, her gaze steady and unwavering. There was no accusation in her eyes, no hint of malice, only a quiet strength that unnerved Vivian even more. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the rustle of silk and the frantic thumping of Vivian's heart. The weight of her actions, of her prejudice, pressed down on her, threatening to suffocate her. Suddenly, the carefully constructed dam of Vivian's composure burst. "It's not perfect," she blurted out, her voice sharp and brittle. "It's all ruined. Because of you." Nia's eyebrows rose slightly, but her expression remained unchanged. "Because of me?" she repeated calmly. "Yes, you." Vivian's voice rose, her words tumbling out in a torrent of accusations. "You and your kind. You come in here pretending you belong, flaunting your wealth. You think you can just waltz in and take what you want. You've ruined everything." The other staff members, frozen in place, watched the scene unfold in stunned silence. Jessica Walters, alerted by the commotion, rushed into the fitting room, her face a mask of confusion. "Vivian, what is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice sharp with authority. Vivian, her face flushed with a mixture of anger and fear, turned to Jessica, her voice trembling. She's the one. The bride. She's been trying to sabotage us. Vivian's words trailed off, her voice choked with emotion. The realization of what she had done, of the magnitude of her mistake, hit her with full force. She had not only insulted and humiliated Nia, she had also jeopardized the future of the boutique, the livelihoods of her staff, and her own career. Nia, still composed, stepped forward. "Vivian," she said, her voice calm and steady, "I understand your anger. I understand your fear. But you are wrong. I didn't come here to sabotage you. I came here to find a wedding dress, just like any other bride." She paused, her gaze softening slightly. "And I'm sorry," she continued, "that you felt threatened by my presence. I'm sorry that you saw me as an enemy instead of a human being." Vivian stared at her, speechless. The sincerity in Nia's voice, the lack of judgment in her eyes, disarmed her. The anger that had been fueling her, the fear that had been consuming her, began to dissipate, replaced by a wave of shame and regret. Jessica Walters, who had been watching the exchange with growing horror, finally found her voice. "Vivian," she said, her voice cold and hard, "I think it's best if you leave. Now!" Vivian, her shoulders slumped in defeat, nodded silently. She turned and walked out of the fitting room, her steps heavy and slow, the weight of her actions bearing down on her like a physical burden. The silence in the room was deafening. As Vivian left the boutique, a figure stepped forward from the shadows. It was Ethan Matthews. He approached Jessica Walters, his expression calm and composed, his eyes holding a glint of steel. "Ms. Walters," he said, his voice smooth and even, "I believe we have some business to discuss." Jessica, her face pale and drawn, nodded weakly. She led Ethan to a small, private office, her mind racing, a sense of foreboding settling over her. Inside the office, Ethan wasted no time. He explained, in concise, measured tones, that he had been aware of Vivian's behavior from the beginning. He had witnessed her prejudice firsthand, had seen the pain it had caused Nia, and he had decided to take action. "I have acquired Vivian Monroe's boutique," he announced, his voice calm and unwavering. Jessica's eyes widened in disbelief. She opened her mouth to speak, but Ethan held up a hand, silencing her. "I don't intend to run it as a business," he continued. "I intend to transform it into something more meaningful, something that will empower women, something that will celebrate diversity and inclusion." He paused, his gaze meeting Jessica's. "I'm calling it the Nia Bennett Center for Bridal Equality," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "And I'm inviting you to stay on as a consultant to help us build something truly special." Jessica, still reeling from the shock, could only nod. She had been so focused on prestige, on profit, that she had been blind to the toxic culture that had festered within her own boutique. She had been so obsessed with appearances that she had failed to see the true beauty that lay within. The grand opening of the Nia Bennett Center for Bridal Equality was a resounding success. Women from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, filled the once exclusive boutique, their faces glowing with excitement and anticipation. Nia, radiant in a simple but elegant gown, stood beside Ethan, her hand resting on his arm, her eyes shining with happiness. As she looked around the room, at the diverse array of faces, at the joy and hope that filled the air, she knew that she had transformed her pain into something beautiful, something powerful. She had taken the ugliness she had encountered and turned it into an opportunity to create something good, something that would empower others and make a real difference in the world. In the back of the room, a figure stood watching, her face a mixture of shame and awe. It was Vivian Monroe. She had come to witness the transformation of the boutique she had once ruled, the boutique that had become a symbol of her own failings. As she watched Nia, her heart filled with a complex mix of emotions, a young woman approached her, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," the young woman said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I never thought I could afford a dress like this, let alone feel this beautiful." Vivian stared at her, speechless. The young woman's face, it was familiar. It took a moment, a painful moment, for the realization to dawn. It was her daughter, estranged for years, now a beneficiary of the very foundation she had inadvertently helped create. Tears welled up in Vivian's eyes, tears of regret, of shame, but also, perhaps, of a glimmer of hope. She had been so blinded by her own prejudice, by her own insecurities, that she had failed to see the beauty in others, the beauty in her own daughter. And now, thanks to Nia's grace and Ethan's vision, she had been given a second chance, a chance to see the world through different eyes, a chance to finally understand the true meaning of equality, of compassion, and of love. The weeks following the opening of the Nia Bennett Center for Bridal Equality were a whirlwind of activity. The media coverage was extensive, praising Nia and Ethan's vision, highlighting the center's mission of inclusivity and empowerment. Donations poured in, solidifying the foundation's future and expanding its reach. Nia, now a prominent figure in the philanthropic world, thrived in her new role. She worked tirelessly, overseeing the center's operations, meeting with designers, and mentoring young women from underprivileged backgrounds. The pain of her experience at Vivienne Monroe's boutique had transformed into a driving force, fueling her passion for social justice and her commitment to creating a more equitable world. Ethan, ever the supportive partner, stood by her side, his quiet strength and unwavering belief in her vision a constant source of encouragement. He watched with pride as Nia blossomed, her inherent grace and compassion magnified by her newfound purpose. Jessica Walters, humbled by her experience, embraced her role as a consultant with a renewed sense of purpose. She immersed herself in the center's mission, working closely with Nia to ensure its success. She learned from the young women she mentored, their stories of resilience and determination inspiring her to confront her own past prejudices and embrace a more inclusive worldview. Linda Harper, freed from Vivienne's toxic influence, flourished in the center's supportive environment. She discovered a hidden talent for design, her creativity blossoming under Nia's mentorship. She became a key member of the team, her quiet strength and unwavering dedication an invaluable asset. Vivienne Monroe, however, remained a ghost, a shadow haunting the periphery of Nia's success. She had lost her job, her reputation, and her sense of self-worth. The encounter with her daughter had been a turning point, a painful but necessary awakening. She saw the damage she had caused, the opportunities she had squandered, the relationships she had fractured. She was adrift, lost in a sea of regret, unsure of how to navigate her way back to shore. One rainy afternoon, as Nia was leaving the center, she saw a familiar figure huddled on a bench across the street. It was Vivienne, her clothes damp, her hair disheveled, her eyes fixed on the bustling activity within the center. Nia hesitated, then crossed the street, her heart filled with a complex mix of emotions. "Vivienne," she said softly, her voice gentle. Vivienne started, her eyes widening in surprise. She looked at Nia, her face a mask of shame and vulnerability. I didn't expect to see you here," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Nia sat down beside her, the rain falling softly around them. "Why are you here, Vivienne?" she asked, her voice kind. Vivienne hesitated, then looked down at her hands, her voice choked with emotion. I just wanted to see it," she whispered, "to see what you've created." She paused, then looked up at Nia, her eyes filled with tears. It's beautiful," she said, her voice trembling. You've done something truly amazing." Nia listened patiently, her heart filled with compassion. She saw the genuine remorse in Vivienne's eyes, the flicker of hope struggling to ignite within her. "Vivienne," she said, her voice soft but firm, "you're not a bad person. You made mistakes, yes, but you can learn from them. You can grow. You can change." She paused, then extended her hand. "Come back, Vivienne," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "Come back and be a part of this. Help us build something beautiful, something that will make a real difference in the world." Vivienne stared at Nia's outstretched hand, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had expected anger, condemnation, perhaps even revenge. But instead, she was met with kindness, with compassion, with an offer of redemption. Tears streamed down her face as she reached out and took Nia's hand, her own trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for giving me another chance." Vivienne's return to the center was a gradual process, a journey of healing and self-discovery. She started by volunteering, her initial awkwardness slowly giving way to a renewed sense of purpose. She worked closely with Linda, their shared experience forging a bond of understanding and mutual respect. She also began to reconnect with her daughter, their relationship slowly rebuilding, brick by brick, on a foundation of honesty and forgiveness. She learned to listen, to empathize, to see the world through her daughter's eyes. And in doing so, she began to see herself in a new light, a light that illuminated the path towards redemption. The annual gala celebrating the Nia Bennett Center for Bridal Equality was a glittering affair, a testament to the center's success and its impact on the community. Nia, radiant in a stunning gown, stood beside Ethan, their hands clasped together, their eyes shining with pride. As she looked around the room, at the diverse array of faces, at the stories of hope and transformation that filled the air, she knew that she had achieved something truly remarkable. She had taken the pain of her experience and transformed it into a beacon of light, a symbol of equality and empowerment. During the gala, Nia took the stage, her voice clear and strong, her words resonating with the power of her conviction. "Every bride deserves to feel special," she said, her gaze sweeping across the room. "No matter who she is, where she comes from, or what she believes. Every woman deserves to be celebrated, to be empowered, to be seen." She paused, then smiled, her eyes sparkling with emotion. "And that," she continued, "is what this center is all about. It's about creating a space where every woman can feel beautiful, can feel valued, can feel like she belongs." The room erupted in applause, the sound a wave of affirmation, a testament to the power of Nia's vision and the impact she had made on the lives of so many. As the applause subsided, Nia looked out at the crowd, her eyes searching for a familiar face. She spotted Vivian, standing near the back of the room, her daughter by her side. Their eyes met, and a silent, understanding passed between them. A smile touched Vivian's lips, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, a smile that reflected the healing that had taken place, the transformation that had begun. In that moment, Nia knew that her journey had come full circle. She had not only found her own happiness, but she had also helped others find theirs. She had transformed her pain into purpose, her vulnerability into strength, her experience into a legacy of hope and empowerment. And in doing so, she had become a true symbol of grace, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit.